Get out of my house before I call the cops. That's what Moore and Prescott screamed at me when I walked through the door of my own lake house, only to find strangers unpacking their bags in my living room. I'd been away for months guiding kayak tours, but somehow my property was listed as a vacation rental for $250 a night, and the guests had receipts. No notice, no permission, nothing. The worst part? It was all run by the president of our HOA, and I had no idea. How could this even happen? And what would I do next to take back what was mine? The answer was far darker than I expected. Moore and Prescott was the face of the Pine Lake HOA, the kind of person you never questioned, the one who seemed to have everything under control. Mid-50s, always impeccably dressed, and with a reputation for running the neighborhood with an iron fist. If there was a rule, she enforced it. If something was wrong, she fixed it. Or so everyone thought. But I knew her. I'd seen her at every HOA meeting, her sharp eyes always calculating, her smile too practiced. She'd been the president for 8 years, keeping everything efficient. But there was something behind that polished exterior, a hunger for control, a need to manipulate. And it was that need that led to my house being turned into her personal business. It wasn't the first time Morin had crossed a line. But this was something bigger. And it wasn't just my home she'd taken. It was my trust. My grandfather built the lake house in the 70s. It was his pride. And when he passed, he left it to me with one simple request. Don't let it become just another rental. It was more than just a house. It was a legacy. I spent my off-seasons here, a place to decompress after guiding kayak tours through the wild rivers. No distractions, just the lake and the quiet woods. Before I left for the season, I'd made sure everything was in order. Paid the bills, took care of the lawn, locked up the house, and set the alarm. It wasn't much, but it was enough. I didn't need a caretaker. This was my place, my sanctuary. So when I drove back to Pine Lake after months on the road, the first thing I noticed was the lawn. It looked freshly mowed, too freshly mowed. The edges were trimmed perfectly, like someone had been maintaining it. But I hadn't hired anyone. I always took care of the yard myself. That stopped me in my tracks. The second thing that felt wrong was the mailbox. Usually it was stuffed with junk mail, community newsletters, the usual clutter. But today, just a few utility bills. Strange. I walked up to the porch and noticed something else. A silver SUV parked behind the house, barely visible from the road. Tourists? Maybe. Happens all the time here. There's a public beach nearby, and people often pull into driveways by mistake, but it wasn't just the lawn or the mailbox. When I unlocked the door, something hit me. The air was different. The house smelled like fresh coffee. A coffee maker sat on the kitchen counter. I didn't own a coffee maker. Never had. I stepped inside, still trying to make sense of it all, and that's when I saw it. 2 hiking backpacks near the stairs, expensive ones with carabiners and patches from national parks. A laptop sitting open on the kitchen table, the screen glowing with a booking confirmation. The header read, Pine Lake HOA Vacation Rentals. My heart sank. I wasn't just seeing things. This wasn't some misunderstanding. My house, my grandfather's legacy, had been listed as a rental, and it was all run by someone I thought I could trust. I stood there, my eyes darting between the strange scene unfolding before me. The couple standing at the foot of the stairs, middle-aged, both in bathrobes, looked at me as though I was the intruder. The woman's face twisted from relaxation to alarm in an instant, and she quickly pulled out her phone. Her husband stepped forward, blocking the doorway, his stance protective, as if I were the one breaking into their home. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded, his voice sharp. "You can't just break in here." I was still trying to process it all, trying to wrap my mind around the absurdity of it. "Break in?" I echoed, fighting to keep my voice steady. "This is my house. I'm Sawyer Dalton." The woman, trembling now, began dialing. "We paid for this. We have a reservation." The man pointed at the laptop on the table, his face turning defensive. "It's all confirmed." I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my emails. Nothing. No reservation, no booking request, no communication. Just the haunting confirmation that someone else had taken control of my property. The situation was escalating quickly. As I stood there, the couple grew more insistent, more frightened. The woman was almost frantic now. speaking rapidly to the emergency dispatcher. I wasn't sure whether to feel sorry for them or furious at the situation I was now trapped in. They had been lied to. They'd been scammed into thinking they had a legitimate booking. When the sheriff's deputy arrived, I could barely contain my frustration. The deputy, young and polite, verified my ID and deed, asking a few questions. The couple showed him their reservation and payment receipt, their confirmation email, everything they could. It all looked legitimate. Except for one thing. I had never authorized any of it. I explained to the deputy that I had no knowledge of any booking system or rental agreement involving my property. Morin Prescott's name, our HOA President, came to mind. But I kept it to myself. The deputy's face shifted from routine to serious. "This is unauthorized rental activity," he said softly. "I'd advise you to contact whoever you paid. You have every right to refuse them entry." The woman's face crumpled in defeat. She had driven hours for an anniversary trip, and now her vacation was ruined. I felt the sting of it, but the anger inside me was growing. Someone had been behind this. Someone had orchestrated it, and I knew exactly who. The couple left, their spirits crushed. I watched their taillights fade into the distance as the deputy continued to take notes, his expression growing more serious with every detail I revealed. I was shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. How had this happened? How had Morin Prescott, someone I trusted, someone everyone trusted, pulled this off? As I stood there, the deputy gave me his card, telling me to file a formal report. "This isn't just a civil dispute anymore," he said. "There are criminal elements here. Fraud, identity theft, potential forgery. If she forged your signature on any documents, we could be talking about serious charges." I nodded, my mind racing. Fraud, identity theft. I ran through the possibilities in my head. Someone had listed my property as a rental, taken money for it, and given access without my consent. And the worst part? It was all happening under the guise of the HOA, the one thing that was supposed to protect the neighborhood, not exploit it. I pulled out my phone again, checking the Pine Lake HOA website. That's when I saw it. Pine Lake HOA Vacation Rentals. There it was, in bold, with professional photos of my house, my dock, my view. Only, I'd never agreed to any of it. This was Morin's doing, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The sheriff couldn't do much more for me that night. The rental company was unreachable, the HOA office was closed for the weekend, and the deputy had no choice but to leave me with nothing but his contact info and a suggestion to follow up on Monday. I was left standing there, alone in my grandfather's house, staring out at the lake. The calm water reflected the fading sunset, but inside, I was anything but calm. I felt like my entire life had been violated. I tried calling Morin's personal number, the one she'd given to homeowners for emergencies, but it went straight to voicemail. I left no message. I had a feeling she knew exactly what was happening, and I wasn't about to give her a head start. By the time the weekend was over, I had done what I should have done earlier. I started digging. I looked into the HOA's financials, the rental program, and everything connected to it. And that's when I found the truth. Morin Prescott wasn't just using my house. She was using all of us. And the worst part? She was getting away with it. Monday came, and I went straight to the HOA office. Morin was already there, moving around her desk, looking unbothered, as if she hadn't just made my life a living nightmare. She looked up when I entered, a cool smile forming on her lips. "Sawyer," she said, her voice smooth. "I've been meaning to talk to you about the temporary management program. Your property's been vacant for a while." My blood boiled. "My property is not part of any rental program." "What's going on, Morin? Why are strangers renting my house without my permission?" Her smile didn't waver, but there was a flicker in her eyes. She opened a drawer and pulled out a folder, placing it between us with an almost theatrical flourish. According to Section 7.3 of the HOA covenants, homes that are unoccupied for more than 90 days can be placed under temporary management. I was furious. "I've never signed anything like that. I've never authorized you to do this." She slid a piece of paper across the desk. "Your absence from the meeting constitutes implied consent. You should have paid attention." But I didn't need to look closely to see it. That signature wasn't mine. It was forged. And that's when I realized. This was no accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Maureen Prescott had been using the HOA to run a business at my expense, and she wasn't about to stop. By the time I reached the HOA office on that fateful Monday, I had everything I needed. I was ready to confront Maureen Prescott. Her calm, collected demeanor cracked the moment I stepped into the room. Her eyes flickered with that familiar calculated look, but there was a hint of unease beneath it. "I need answers, Maureen," I said, my voice steady but sharp. "Why are you renting out my property without my permission?" She leaned back in her chair, her lips curving into that same rehearsed smile. "Sawyer, this is a standard procedure. You were absent, and according to our bylaws, we manage unoccupied homes. It's in the best interest of the community." I slammed the papers down on her desk. "You're lying. You've been forging signatures, operating a private rental business under the HOA's name, and using my property for profit. I have proof." Maureen's face twisted into something less professional, more defensive. "I don't know what you're talking about. You're making a mistake." I wasn't making a mistake. I was about to expose everything. Before she could say another word, I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through the evidence I had gathered. The forged signatures, the fraudulent business registrations, the payments made to her personal accounts. "Here it is, Maureen," I said, holding up the images. "You're running a private business, Lakeview Property Services. You've been collecting rental income under that name, not the HOA. And look at this. This is your signature on documents I never signed." Her eyes went wide, the confident mask slipping just enough for me to see the panic beneath. That's not true," she stammered, her voice shaky for the first time. I didn't stop there. I showed her the rental income records, the bank transfers, and the correspondence from other homeowners who'd been swindled in the same way. The weight of it all pressed down on her. She looked at me, her hands shaking, her entire empire beginning to crumble. Her excuses were falling apart, but it wasn't enough to stop her. She tried to remain composed, but I could see the desperation building in her eyes. "You don't understand," she said, her voice almost pleading. "I've been doing this for the good of the community. The rentals, the management fees, they pay for the upkeep of the neighborhood. I've made it better." "By stealing from us?" I shot back. "By forging signatures and using our homes as your personal ATM?" Just as she opened her mouth to argue further, the door to the office burst open. 3 sheriff's deputies walked in, led by the detective I'd been working with. "Maureen Prescott," the detective said, holding up a warrant. "We're here to seize all records, computers, and any documentation related to your rental operations. You're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and identity theft." Maureen froze, her composure slipping entirely. "This is a mistake," she whispered, but her voice cracked. "I built this community, built this. I've done everything for Pine Lake." The detective's eyes narrowed. "Not like this, you didn't." Maureen's face turned pale as they approached her. She didn't resist when they cuffed her, but her defiance lingered in her eyes as they escorted her out. But it wasn't just her arrest. It was the moment that shattered her carefully built facade. The officer bent down and picked up a bag she had been clutching to her chest. It spilled open, revealing stacks of cash, $50 and $100 bills, fluttering in the air like confetti. $8,000. Fresh from her latest scam. As they marched her out of the office, I realized the full scale of the betrayal. She hadn't just stolen from me, she had stolen from all of us. The deputies hauled Maureen away, but the weight of it all lingered. I stood there in the quiet of the office, watching them take her out in handcuffs, and for a moment, I could hardly believe it. The woman I had trusted, the one who ran our HOA with such authority, had been nothing more than a fraud. The other homeowners were texting me, asking what had happened. News traveled fast in Pine Lake, and the community was in shock. Some were relieved, others angry. The trust we had in Maureen was gone, replaced by a bitter realization that she'd been running her own show, manipulating all of us for years. But I felt something else too, a kind of weight lifting off my shoulders. The betrayal was still there, but it was being replaced by a sense of justice. Maureen's empire had crumbled, and she wasn't getting away with it. The legal fallout was swift. Maureen's arrest made headlines across the county. The investigation into her financial dealings revealed the full extent of her crimes: fraud, embezzlement, and even money laundering. She'd funneled over $600,000 through the HOA account into her personal LLC, hiding it behind layers of lies and false documents. In court, her defense crumbled under the weight of the evidence. She tried to paint herself as a well-meaning volunteer, overwhelmed by the burden of managing a neighborhood. But the jury saw through it. Morin was found guilty on all counts: fraud, embezzlement, identity theft, and money laundering. The judge sentenced her to 5 years in federal prison, along with a restitution order to pay back the $680,000 she had stolen. Her assets were seized, including the Mercedes she'd driven around like she was untouchable. Morin's downfall didn't just bring legal consequences, it sparked a change in Pine Lake. The HOA was completely overhauled. The new president was the wildlife biologist who had also been one of Morin's victims. I was elected treasurer, and together we worked to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. The new board implemented sweeping reforms: financial transparency, mandatory background checks for board members, and an independent auditor to review the accounts. Everything was open for homeowners to see. No more secrecy, no more manipulation. As for the restitution, the funds were distributed fairly among the victims, and I personally donated half of my share back to the HOA with one stipulation. It had to be used for legal education programs to help homeowners understand their rights. By the time the next summer rolled around, Pine Lake felt different. There were no more hushed whispers in hallways or secretive board meetings. Neighbors actually talked at HOA meetings now, asking questions, holding each other accountable. The community felt united, stronger, and safer than it had in years. And as I sat on my porch, watching the sun set over the lake, I realized how much had changed. Not just in Pine Lake, but in me. My grandfather's words echoed in my mind. Stand your ground with proof. That's exactly what I had done, and it was enough. I had fought for what was right, and I had helped make the community better for everyone. Life on the lake wasn't just about the property. It was about the people and the values we upheld. I'd learned that the hard way, but it was a lesson I would carry with me for the rest of my life. The sun dipped below the tree line, the first stars of the evening starting to shine. I took a deep breath, feeling the peace return. The fight was over. But the lessons it left behind, those would stay with me forever. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more unbelievable HOA stories.